Hi, I am Evan Finch with Power-Tek Group, and today's video we'll be talking about three different types of fish tapes. We have our motorized, battery-powered Milwaukee fuel brushless fish tape. We have our Klein fiberglass fish tape and a Milwaukee metal 200-foot fish tape. So we'll start with a little bit of safety on using a fish tape. Anytime you use one of these, you want to have your safety glasses for sure, as they all, the fish tapes themselves are very flingy. They can bounce around a lot and they could hit you in the eye. So these are a must, as well as a lot of cases a hard hat if you're doing overhead pulls, where you could have a really tough pull and maybe like the conduit could come flying down to the ceiling. Like, you never know what could happen. So you want to have that head protection in case something breaks as well, like it will protect your head. And obviously your steel toe boots, and for a lot of cases if you're using the metal ones here, pulling that's kind of sharp, like it could hurt your hands, so you want to probably recommend using some gloves for sure, and then also keep your hands clean. Let's start specifically some of the features on our battery powered now. Battery powered fish tape. This one is very heavy, very hard to kind of use one-handed. Like it's very, very heavy. You actually want to let the motor do the work. So I'll give you a little demo on how you actually turn it on and off. There's a little forward lock and reverse button, so you can retract it and shoot it out. So let's say you have a conduit, you can get it in there, you can feed it in, direct it in, and then whenever you get your fish tape through and you tie on the string on the other end, or you can select that into reverse, and same thing, pull the trigger. The trigger, the amount of tension you put on the trigger varies the speed, so the harder you push, the faster it'll go. So when you get near the end, you can just go nice and slow because you don't want that end to shoot in. And I recommend with this, the best use would be like a bigger conduit for, let's say, columns where you're just going to be pulling in a bunch of strings. Any pulls with a lot of tension, you're better off to use your manual fish tapes where you can actually use your hands to fish and pull. Like I said, you just want to use the motor with this. You don't want to force the fish tape or kink it because it'll screw up the recoil inside. This guy is a fiberglass fish tape, so it's actually non-metallic, safe for if you had to fish into a conduit that led into a live panel and you aren't able to shut down or something, for example. That's often not the ideal case. You always want to be fishing into objects that are de-energized, but often sometimes that's not the case. So this is what you want to use for that. Obviously, if you push it in and you go a little too far or hard, or you think you're not there yet and you are, then you accidentally get in there and you hit a bus bar, it's not going to short out or damage or cause electrical shocks. This is very, like, you won't want to pull conductors with this. You'd want to just use a pull string to pull in your conductors with that, because these can break. They're not as strong as the metallic fish tapes. And this fish tape from Milwaukee, they come in a variety of sizes. Like, I think this one's 240 foot. They come in. This one's a 120 foot. You can change the cartridges on the battery powered ones to, I think, up to 240 feet, but they're really heavy. At 120 feet, this is heavy enough. So, but these are nice, lightweight. They're easy to retract and expand, spin the wheel. The only disadvantage of this compared to this is that you have to manually coil this up. So, like, often if you're pulling it back, you're not doing both at the same time. You're pulling it and then doing it after, and the problem with that is it gets all over the floor and kind of a mess and can flip over itself and be a hazard to the area. So that's one benefit of this. It always pushes and then it retracts it right back. You're not pulling the string of a big ball. But this, it's kind of like if you're doing a heavy resistance pull, you need to actually pull the fish tape. And with this, if there's all that resistance, you probably want to just pull in a string with this and then pull that separately. A couple of tricks with using these fish tapes effectively. To limit the resistance, for example, we're going to have somebody at the other end of the pole feeding in the conductors, just so that you're not trying to pull off a reel where it's going to add that extra weight and pull and strain on the fish. Also, if you're using this guy and you have it all unwound and then you're just pulling it onto the floor without winding it up, if you're going to pull it back, you're going to want to stand on the end of this while you're pulling it, just so it's not flopping around everywhere as you're reeling it back in, because that can be a hazard, especially if you're in a room with transformers where that end can whip around and hit live coils inside the transformer. It could hit somebody in the face, and it's just better to stand on that end so it's not going crazy. So that'd be a trick to coiling up this. This, you don't have to worry about that again. It's got the automatic retract and with the button, so you're never going to have a big coil with this. Another good way to limit resistance is lube, wire lube. It's your best friend when it comes to a tight pole. Lots of lube on it, multiple times throughout the pole. And somebody there feeding it, so it goes in nice and straight, which also limits the chances of the conductor getting damaged by skinning on the edge of the connector. Yeah, a couple different lubes you can use. Some yellow 77, which is your standard for yellow soap for you see for the bigger poles, I would say. Then you got your like spray foam, sea foam lube. You can spray in the pipe, which is a lot cleaner to apply than the yellow 77. Sometimes that can be a mess. And you have the clear lube, which is a lot more watery-like substance, so it's easier to clean up. So we'll go over a few tricks of the trade with the fish tapes. We'll talk about the ends on them. So let's say you lose your factor end, or you have to cut it off. If you're going to fish, for ease of fishing, you need to have a nice rounded end. Otherwise, you're going to be fishing and it's going to be catching on all the couplings and connectors or anywhere there's a bend. So that's why you want to have a nice rounded point, just so it goes around nicely around everywhere. It's kind of narrow as possible. You don't want a big fat end on it, because any smaller conduits, it's going to make it a pain in the butt to try to push through. Another trick too, if you do end up kinking your line by accident, if you've had some heavy pulls and for trying to push it in a tight pipe and you've kinked it, you can actually screw some screws or pound some nails into a piece of plywood, and you can take your part that's all kinked and you can weave it through the screws like a snake, and then you can pull that through that section a few times back and forth, and it'll take that kink out and it'll actually make it nice and straight again. So that's a little trick that one of my colleagues taught me, and it's pretty effective. So as I mentioned, this one here is your fish tape of choice often for the heavier pulls. The ones with a lot of resistance, the bigger pulls you're doing. So I'll show you how to properly do that without damaging the fish tape. So what you want to do is once you've got your all fed in, all your fish tape fed in, you're not going to want to pull with your fish tape like this and put the pressure, because what that does is it actually bunches it up really tight inside, and it can actually destroy it or stop it from working properly. So what I usually do is I give that to somebody, like an apprentice or another worker if he's there, to coil up as you're pulling. Or if you're on your own, just set her down like that, so you can have two hands on the fish tape with gloves on, because it could, with the extra pressure, they could dig in and be uncomfortable. So gloves for sure, glasses on, two hands, and just pulling like that out of the conduit with somebody, with either coiling up or somebody coiling up for you. To coil back up, we want to firm grip on the handle. The other hand, grab the wheel, coil it back in, going nice and straight and even. So in closing, this here Fishtapes, your manual 200 foot Milwaukee, this is the one I'm going to be using 99% of the time. It's more versatile. It's heavy duty pulls. You can really pull on it. You can do a lot with this. These ones are more specialty, like the fiberglass, like I've described before. You can use it in certain situations, and this one has got the nice in and out. You don't have to worry about the mess on the floor. It's very clean. It's good for pulling in bigger conduits, for pulling a lot of string for columns, or if you're doing it all day long, this thing will save your arms. And that concludes our discussion today on Fishtapes.